people would come in. At the end of the day, they would grab literally a pint of beer. They would talk to their friends about what's going on, have a sense of community. And normally we take the first floor of Packard Place and we turn it into a pub once a month with the idea that we can create that community amongst ourselves. We normally do it one-on-one with the founder and so they can tell his or her story. And Sam was actually going to be our guest this month, and we've converted that into this panel discussion about kind of what's going on and how we all need to operate. So thank you, Sam, for allowing us to do that. We'll reschedule her one-on-one beer drinking kegside chat story at a later time. And because we don't have a fireplace at Packard Place, but we have a keg, that's why we called it Kegside Chats. And we joke that we'd sit and have a beer, and you'll see us hopefully all having a soda or whiskey or beer or water, whatever it is, as we go and do our chat. We did also change the format tonight, so to do a panel and a discussion kind of about what's going on in our community and how we all respond as an entrepreneurial community. Thom Ruhe, who's the president and CEO of NC Idea, Sam Smith, who's the founder and CEO of Vision, also helped produce Seed the South, and Greg Brown, who's with the Charlotte Angel Fund. A little bit more about each person, if we could advance. A little bit more on Thom. Jasmine, when you have a second, if you could advance to the next one for us. Oh, no, we go straight to Juan. That's perfect. So we took those out. So for Juan, and hopefully Juan is on the line here, and if you could, Jasmine, go ahead and unmute Juan Garzon. Juan is obviously the general manager of Charlotte Eno. Many of you know him. They've been pushing out a survey over the last couple of days talking about how entrepreneurs are responding to the coronavirus and the impact. Juan's going to share some of the top line results for us here in just a second. Before we have Juan tell us what the community is experiencing, we want to do our own online survey and poll. So Jasmine, this would be a great opportunity if you can, if you could push the survey out to all the attendees. We're going to ask you to respond. That will help us tell us who's in the audience. Also allow us to get how you're feeling. There it goes. It should have just popped up on your screen. So if you could scroll down, take you about 30 seconds to fill it out. That will help us understand who's in the room. I'm actually going to fill it out as I talk, and how people feel about what's going on. So I'm going to answer the quiz as we go too. You can click multiple items. So if you need to click multiple, on question 4, it talks about for funders and investors, and question 3 is about for entrepreneurs. Some of you are both. And then the question again about Packard Place and what you think on the public house and how that worked and how Zoom is working out for you so much. And then how you're staying in contact with other people. And so there's Mr. Juan, there's the video on, and then how you're staying connected. So Juan, we'll let everyone kind of work on that for another half second and submit that. We want to get all their results in before you bias them with the kind of the beginning findings that you've already found. So
absolutely.
We'll give people about another 10 seconds to wrap that up. But thank you for being here with us tonight, and thank you for doing that. I think we've given people enough time. If you're still doing that, go ahead and finish up the survey. That's great. And Jasmine, don't share the results until Juan's done. Juan, I'm going to give you the floor. Oh, you're drinking a beer. Love it. Well done on following instructions, Juan. So we'd love to turn the floor over to you to talk about high level. Why don't you explain the survey, what you did, and just spend 1 or 2 minutes on kind of the high level results, okay?
Yeah, sounds great. And am I sharing slides, or am I able to do that, Jasmine?
You should be able to share on your own screen.
Yeah, if you share your screen at the bottom, I think Jasmine has to enable you.
Better be good slides now, Juan.
Do you have a share screen capability at the bottom, Juan?
It just says stop camera.
Oh, it's supposed to say share.
Yeah,
He's probably because he's not a host, probably.
Oh, you know what? I got it.
there.
Oh, cool.
There you go. Hey.
You see it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, very good. Yes, I'm so used to making slides and things for pitch breakfast. I was like, oh shoot, I have to have something official. But I just want to take a few minutes. First of all, a big thank you to Dan for just jumping on this and getting the community together. I'd say you're going to see a lot more events, virtual gatherings. It's just going to be something that we're going to need to do, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But mad props to Packard Place for speed. jumping on that as quickly as you did and giving a little bit of a reassuring get together here today. So awesome. So real quick, to not go through this, it's a very simple survey, and I'll send out a link here at the end, and I'll throw it in chat too. We sent out a simple survey to different organizations, put it on LinkedIn. I still have to tag a bunch more people, tweet it out, email it, and all of that. I want to get as many answers as possible, but we're asking a few simple questions, and that is, first, how is this affecting your company? Everything that's going on here is affecting different companies in different ways. I did put a couple bullets here from some answers that we've gotten, and it ranges anywhere from no negative impacts yet, seeing some supply chain disruptions, down the line, people in specific industries, like if you're in healthcare, getting any kind of doctor to fill out a survey or clinician to help you is near impossible. Several worrying about access to capital, which I'm sure will be a topic in today's discussion. Anybody that was in marketing is feeling the pinch because a lot of companies tighten up on marketing when you have expecting a downturn and there's uncertainty. And it ranges all the way down to, something affecting 50% of our clients to probably the most painful one, 95% of sales drying up. So we're really seeing this range, and it depends on industry, it depends on stage, and a lot that's going to impact your ability to weather it. And that's something that we all can talk about, learn from each other, and work on together. So a lot more answers, but I wanted to kind of just give some examples. Another question, what are you doing to mitigate the impact? We're trying to see what founders are doing, and that is the impact on their business, on their customers, and on their staff. And so, as you can imagine, a lot of this is going to have to do with working remotely. We're going to have to switch to recruiting, training, having a different attitude about working from home. I had somebody who said, you got to be okay with kids crying in the background and all this chaos going on because we're all in that same boat. Some are seeing a bright side. There's more engagement with customers because everybody's home. Nobody can use the excuse of they're out traveling, they're at a conference. Everybody is in their home, at their kitchen table or wherever they are. And really seeing the need to just have more communication with each other. A lot of Slack users, a lot of video calls, things like this, even for small teams. And working with clients to help them prep. If you're an advisor, an attorney, your business is booming, but in a way you're almost playing therapist. So seeing a lot of that. Obviously cutting down on travel and even offering clients lines of credit or reducing and waiving fees for customers. Some doing it because they want their clients to stay in business, and others because this is a time for everyone to help each other. And just to kind of summarize what I'm seeing, and we'll certainly see a lot more and be reporting about it in Charlotte, key findings are some industries are getting hit a lot harder than others. If you're doing okay in yours, don't think that it's like that for everybody else. There are some industries there's some companies that will not survive this. On the bright side, there are some that are doing very well, and I think it was very, very promising that several commented on how they are helping others as a result of that. Everybody is adapting to a new way of work, whether it's now you're meeting online instead of in person, all the way to having to pivot your business model entirely. So I think we're going to start to see some interesting innovations come out of necessity. And the big one is learning how to operate virtually is no longer an option. It's not optional. There's a lot of companies that talked about it, and yeah, this and that, I'm better in person. Everybody is having to learn how to use software like Zoom. They're learning how to engage with clients virtually, and they're having to service their clients somehow virtually. And so we're seeing a whole lot of that. Bottom line is they all need our support. They all need our shared and collective knowledge. Greg Brown, I know he's on the panel, but he had a fantastic comment about older entrepreneurs who have weathered storms in the past, giving some advice to younger entrepreneurs who haven't been through anything like this. Although I would say nobody's been through anything like this, but there have been some other hiccups in the past, and any lessons learned are extremely valuable. And lastly, they all need our help. If you know how to manage all of this technology, if you know how to do virtual calls and how to maintain a virtual team on Slack, now's the time to share that knowledge. And again, this is just touching on what we're finding, and we want to get a lot more. So the big ask is, please take the survey. I'm going to put the actual link on there to display it. The link is, you're never going to remember it, so I just use Pitch Breakfast to forward it. pitchbreakfast.com/coronavirus-survey, and I'll put the type form link in the comments. Please share it with other founders. Please fill it out. And if you've got anything else that wasn't asked on there, reach out to me personally. I want to know how we can help, how we can tell this story, how we can bring the ecosystem together. And I'll also mention one more thing. We have an ecosystem group. So if you have an organization that serves the entrepreneurial community, we just sent out a doodle to find a meeting time for ecosystem groups to come together and figure out how we can do something in a bigger way. So if you're an ecosystem group person, or if you're in that chat room, shoot me a message. I'll send the doodle to you. Otherwise, please share this survey. And yeah, and thanks again, Dan. You know, on this last slide, the big takeaway was we all need community. Everybody recognizes that. And major kudos for being the first one to jump on bringing the community together.
All right, Juan, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. We can give him a silent round of applause. We joked about that. Juan did a training for the QC FinTech class on Monday. We were giving people a silent round of applause. If you could stop sharing your screen, Juan, and then turn your video off, that would be great. And then we will we'll pick back up there. If you go on mute, we'll get everyone back here. All right. There we go. And Jasmine, I think we're still seeing your screen now. There we go. I'll show you that one. So here's the rest of the panel discussions. I got it. And so back to the panel that we're going to start. So this is Thom Ruhe's background. Thom is president and CEO of NC Idea. Worked with the Kauffman Foundation. Very well respected nationally. We're thrilled to have him in North Carolina, although he's been here for a while. Great North Carolina and nationwide perspective. Just knows a ton of folks. If you can advance to the next slide for us, Jasmine. I think Sam's up next. Most of you know Sam, fantastic entrepreneur here in Charlotte, very passionate about Charlotte, passionate about our entrepreneurial community. She's representing the founder hat, although I told them all to be able to talk about whatever they want to. Tom's kind of representing the ecosystem support hat, national perspective. Sam's kind of representing the entrepreneurial community, if you will. And the next slide, we have Greg Brown, who's the administrator of the Charlotte Angel Fund, of which I'm also a member. Many of you on the line here are members, representing kind of the funder investor perspective for where we go on that. So if we could share, maybe Jasmine, if you want to stop sharing screen, we'll go back to the profiles. At least I think that's what's next. And then also, if you want to go ahead and post our survey results, maybe that would be, actually before you post the survey results, we'll have maybe our panelists just start talking. Oh, I do want to show you, by the way, now that we all talked about getting better at being online meetings, we just had way too much fun with this. And so I'm going to show you my favorite thing to do, which is throw in virtual backdrops. So I'm going to go full on Elon Musk on y'all. So there's the survey results. Fantastic. So let's just take a look at this. And for people on the survey, on the panel, actually an interesting mix. And for folks on the panel, go ahead and take yourselves off mute and feel free to comment on this as well. But more of a balanced mix than I would have thought about who is here. I was expecting to be an 80% entrepreneur, so that's good to see. Not terribly surprised by question number 2. You know, some concern, but calm. Question number 3, multiple boxes. So people could have chose multiple boxes on this one, but interesting to see sales and sales pipeline, clearly the biggest concern, not shocked by that. Maybe a little surprised not to see the cash on hand, not that big. For funders, deal flow drying up was interesting. You know, people that have capital want to deploy it. So shockingly, even in this environment, people still want to go make money. They want to put their money to work. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about that, but I know a number of folks that are in large cash positions now because they're not in the equity markets, trying to figure out how to go make money. On the virtual house, the Packard place, good results there. Technical aspects, I think some good feedback early. Virtual events, looks like a lot of people looking for expert advice. looks like a smorgasbord kind of there of people across the board trying a lot of different things on question number 7. And then on question number 8, keeping in for your LinkedIn, Slack, again, looks like multiple sources. Folks on the panel, any of you surprised by those survey results, assuming you've had a chance to look at it?
Surprised we're not completely freaking out. I'm only in the 4% of people freaking out. That's good to know.
We have a lack of honesty in our respondents.
Yeah. Yeah, concerned. Gotta work from home, but we're not freaking out. Gotcha.
I would just make a comment about investors and deal flow concerns. I've already been hit up by multiple funds from outside of North Carolina. I mean, all you have to do is look at what's happening, in the markets right now, and keeping your money, in public markets right now is not obviously looking very attractive. So I think the maybe less than intuitive other side of this coin, I mean, of course, they're going to be bargain hunting because that's just the nature of capital markets. But I think there's going to be a pretty good willingness to deploy capital in a way other than, what I just saw hemorrhage by 35% over the last 10 days.
Yeah, Thom, since you have the floor, why don't you, we'll go around to each of them in order, but other observations from the survey, and then just things you're seeing. Again, you're probably as plugged in as anyone on this webinar or discussion about kind of the national scene and national connection. So anything else in the survey that surprised you? And then what else are you seeing on a national conversation theme trend line?
So the fact that sales is the number one concern for the entrepreneurs right now. I can tell you, my last startup, I started on September 12th, 2001.
So you're the problem.
And so for those of you who understand that specific date, that was the day after 9/11. And I had just presided over a $168 million flush of a venture-backed company. And 6 of the employees I laid off on 9/11 of all days. We went off and started my last startup, which was an agency and a custom app development shop at a time when nobody wanted to advertise or spend a dime doing anything in that space, right? So when you had talked about some of us that are a little older, having certain memories of this, I was mentioning to some folks earlier that this feels reminiscent of 9/11. And then, throw in a little bit of 08 when we saw liquidity evaporate overnight. And, just the impact, again, of capital markets and what does that mean? So that doesn't surprise me in the least from the survey. I'm encouraged that people aren't freaking out yet. I would give you time. I've been getting phone calls from all over the country right now. And I've heard everything from troops and tanks are marshaling in Ohio right now to force lockdowns, to the FAA closing the entire airways probably within 72 hours, if not sooner. And I think at that time, you're going to see what resolve, if any, we have, as a mass of humanity, when you realize I don't have an option to go somewhere, right? That's going to really test a lot of people's resolve. And the other part that you just cannot, one of my neighbors here where I live, he's a surgeon in the UNC system, and just shared with me a deep dive update on what UNC is doing on the COVID. And, it is not encouraging. Like because we haven't really started testing at all yet, the public has a false sense of what the impact of the virus is internally. And once that becomes public, and I'm not trying to turn this into a COVID conversation, I'm trying to say what the market reactions, what the personal reactions, how that will impact businesses will be a concern. So y'all should just be bracing for much worse news to come, but be rational about that when it hits. Do what you can, be calm, don't overreact, and hopefully we kind of get through this together.
So Thom, I appreciate those comments. When everyone knows I run the FinTech Accelerator and obviously also Packard Place, the Entrepreneurship Center. And I think we've been a little bit ahead of the curve on the thinking of this. March 1st is when I put up the "Don't Shake Hands at Packard Place" signs, and people thought I was crazy. Last Thursday, we canceled moved all in-person events to virtual. Friday, we sent the teams home and sent the cohort 12 home to go and do everything virtually. And people thought I was overreacting. And now sitting here on Wednesday, that doesn't look so crazy anymore. what I told them, and it aligns with what you said, I think the level of anxiety, concern is going to continue to go up for a period of time. I don't think we've peaked. I think for everyone on the line to steel yourself that more bad news is coming, and it will peak and crescendo, and then everyone's going to take a deep breath and realize the earth is still revolving, and oh my God, we got to go about doing business. But I think there is a period of time before that happens. Sam, your perspective as a founder, the people that Thom was talking about directly relates to you. You're living the story. I think you might even be in the middle of a raise, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. And I'll be honest with everyone on this call because I'm always honest. So just to let you guys know, I'm a full transparency buff. And if anyone has any questions about anything, I'll always give you exactly what I'm thinking. I think the hardest part of this situation right now is that it's very individualistic for different founders. No matter which founder you speak with, there's a problem of some sort. And it might be something that you didn't anticipate. And I think the best founders in the last week showed us how they pivot and how they're trying to figure it out within this new style of living. I wrote down 4 elements of really what I've been thinking about in the past week, which sucks because if you think I've been quarantined technically for 2 weeks.
You need to tell people that story, Sam. Back up a second. Tell them about the pitch conference.
So I won a pitch competition. Just to let you know, that was the highlight of this month. So won the pitch competition in San Francisco. We won $10,000. And then we got an email that someone in the audience had the coronavirus. So I'm pretty much probably one of the first people to quarantine. So I am the safest person to be around right now. But for us personally, we're in the middle of a raise. And I'll tell you that most of our raise is angel investors. So this is different than institutional funding, where if someone's in the middle of the raise that's focusing on institutional funding, they may see like a blip because obviously those people are trying to hemorrhage and help the companies that they have in their portfolio who are dealing with issues, which is completely rational. For angel investors, they're looking at their own bank accounts, and depending upon what situation they're in, it very much varies. So for someone like me, when it comes to fundraising, this has not been a great week, just to let everyone know. And I just got an email 2 weeks ago. I had someone who offered to pretty much fill my round for half my valuation. And I told them that they could, be on my update list. And today I was like, so is that offer still around? just curious. And guess what? It's not. To let everyone know, it's not. So it's like, it's one of those things, I put a smile on my face, but, and it's not vision that I'm concerned about. What's lucky about the company that I have, we are 100% virtual, and this situation is actually something, which is terrible to say, but an advantage for us. This is something where I can see us sincerely taking off and showcasing how people can leverage a virtual realm. And if you don't know anything about Vision, we just launched Vision Social, which enables people to share beautiful spaces with other folks. We have our clients, their showrooms are closing. People can't visit them. High Point Market, which is the #1 event in in North Carolina, the most profitable event in North Carolina, no one can go to. So I'm talking to High Point Market. I'm talking to all of our brands about how they can go virtual. I am very much, I think, the exception to the rule of that this situation is going to be okay for me. And I very much feel for the individuals who they're trying to figure it out. I think the #1 thing, and I talked to Greg about this earlier, for someone like me is how do you make sure you're not ambulance chasing, that you're showing something that's going to react negatively to the environment. I'm here to help. I want to help the individuals who are struggling, but how do we make sure that it doesn't seem like I'm taking advantage of those individuals just because the opportunity arises? Yeah. So the last thing that I left my team with, who's struggling because some of their spouses are affected, and I'm trying to fundraise to get them paid, but some of the people are dropping out. That's more of what I'm dealing with right now as far as issues are concerned, is how do we pivot to hope? How can we make this hopeful? How can we let people see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel? Because right now it's really bleak. And how can we as a startup help with that? And the last note that I'll make is I do have an ecosystem group. It's called Collective Hustle. I have a lot of friends who have physical touch or event type startups. And for me, recognizing early on that I'm one of the lucky ones, tried very early to get in touch with those folks and send out today how you can help and interact with those startups. There's a link that I'll send later, but we'll put your special offers. We'll put what your pivots are, your gift cards, or whatever you're doing to get through this time. We'll put it on Collective Hustle's website, and every week we'll email out deals to the Collective Hustle community.
That's great. Thank you for that, Sam. And I think we're going to get some of those questions too about how do you react as the founder? What do you tell your team, right? And how do you a sense of calm, not unrealistic, talking about the facts. If you all remember, there's a little bit older, but Jim Collins wrote the book Good to Great. And he talked about level 5 leadership in it. And one of the things he talked about that is the two seemingly contradictory traits of really great business leaders, which is a hold of the facts and the reality as they are, not as we want them to be, not Pollyanna, right? So a realistic understanding of the situation and an ability to say, we, the team, have the ability to get through those challenges, right? We're innovative, we're creative, we can pivot. And those seem to contradict each other, but they say that's what the very best leaders do. Talk directly, honestly, and openly with your team, and then talk about how some solutions, things that you can control and where you can take it. So, Greg, I want to pivot back around to you. From the investor perspective, we already got a little bit of that, right? And these comments I know are going to start triangulating real fast. Share with us your perspective as an investor. You have all these Charlotte Angel Fund members who I'm sure are probably pinging you. You have founders who are probably pinging you. Anything surprising in the survey that you saw pop up from Juan or online with us? And then share initial thoughts with what you're hearing and seeing.
To me, the big thing is uncertainty, right? I think human beings are amazing animals. The one thing that none of us deal well with is uncertainty. And that's what we all have at the moment, right? There's not, you think about how things seemed to us a week ago versus how they seem today, and drastically different. And none of us know how it's going to feel, not even a week from today. Like, what's Friday going to feel like? I don't know, right? I don't know what's going to happen between now and then. And so you have these different, I think the different constituencies, the reaction to that is different. On the investor side, the reaction to uncertainty is to hunker down and do nothing, because there isn't extreme urgency, right? Oh, I'll just wait and see. Should I put some money into the stock market? Well, when I wait, it might go low. I'll wait and see. And if it goes up, if I miss 10% because it starts to come back up, okay. But most investor types react to that uncertainty with a wait and see. I don't think entrepreneurs have that luxury. They can't wait and see, because right now time is their enemy. Time is their enemy because their cash availability and their cash zero date is their enemy, right? And so they can't just hunker down and say, or I would suggest shouldn't just hunker down and say, I'll just keep doing the same thing until I have a bunch more data. They're going to have to make a lot of decisions based on not very much data, because none of us have been down this particular road before. So they're forced to embrace the risk. The investor side will tend to shy away from it at the moment. I'll share with you. So Sam and I had a conversation this morning, and I think I'm going to share it with the group. She and I talked about that we're both okay with being transparent about this. So Vision's in due diligence process with Charlotte Angel Fund. I had to have a conversation with Sam about the fact that I talked with the Charlotte Angel Fund board. Our process is that, I'm not the fund manager. So ultimately the 80 some members of Charlotte Angel Fund vote on whether or not to do something. That I think we would be doing our entrepreneurs a disservice to ask our investors to make a decision in this environment, because there are going to be companies that deserve a yes, they're going to get a no. And they're going to get a no because the investor side is going to react to the environment, not the company. And so that was not a conversation either Sam or I wanted to have, right? I don't like being here. She didn't want to hear that. And, but I think we have an understanding and a certain amount of empathy for one another in it and understand where we're at, but it's not a pleasant place to be. I fully understand the impact that has on Sam's business, and how that she's not able to get her fundraise move forward.
I think I did see her open a second bottle of wine as you were talking there, Greg.
Yeah.
So.
Sam, I'll pay for the second one. Okay.
Oh, okay. I have a Venmo, everyone.
As you do this environment learning, as you do this environment, try and keep it interactive. I know we have about 80 people on the line, which is great. I'm going to go ahead and up kind of early and open it up to Q&A, because I think that will help us get more interaction, see what people want to do. So if you don't know, if you go to the bottom of your screens, everyone, there's a button that says participants. If you click on that participant button, it'll pop up a box. One, you'll see everyone that's there, a lot of phone numbers. And there's a button that says mute me and then raise hand. That's how you raise your hand to ask a question. So if anyone has questions out there, go ahead and raise your hand, and we will call on you. And I think I saw one. Ernest asked a question that got texted in, so I'm going to read this all to you. What's your view on the China-U.S. supply chain future, incentives for the U.S. fabrication and production? Anyone have a perspective on that? I know you guys are not international import-export experts, but anyone have a perspective on that one?
I was going to leave it to one of the other gentlemen if they have experience.
Thom, you have anything on that one? You're probably maybe the closest to that. I mean, what do you think longer term?
I think what's going to happen is there's going to be diversification is going to be a push. Everybody rushed to China, probably starting about a good 20 years ago now. Those that were even more price sensitive and in certain verticals then even found China to be too pricey and have gone to places like Bangladesh. I think this notion that we're going to have any type of vertical that is, majority present in a particular foreign market is going to be problematic. You've heard our policymakers, crying around prescription drugs, for example, and the majority of these being, manufactured over in China at the moment, and the weakness that presents for the U.S. government. Side note, that wasn't always the case. There was a time leading up into the mid '90s where the majority of prescription drugs that were imported into the U.S. came from Puerto Rico, based upon a special tax status that the island had. And they had 10-year warning to change that, because the industry was going to change, and they didn't. And that's why Puerto Rico has the financial concerns they have right now. But I think diversification is going to become a much higher impetus, and it's going to affect blended margins across your supply chain, where you're going to be willing to accept the same inputs from multiple different supply chain sources at different price points, but make it work in a blended way so that you have the diversification in your supply chain.
Yep. And also, Jasmine, if you're hearing me, one of our participants, Alani, I think that's how you pronounce the name, mentioned they have some expertise in this. So if you could go find Alani and unmute them, let's see if we can make this happen. We're going to experiment a little bit here. There we go. You are unmuted, so go ahead.
Hello, yeah. So I think Thom was right there. I mean, we're going to see a lot of diversification simply because, this isn't happening for the first time. This has happened before, because there was a period where, and I lived this, and interestingly, just to backtrack a little bit, I've been on all three sides, from the investor side, the founder side, and in the middle of a raise and all that. But this happened with Taiwan, this happened in Malaysia, and it's happening in China again. And ultimately what comes out of this is we're going to see these cartels that form their own trade agreements, because, stateside now we're looking at, how do we, diversify to ensure that we don't put all our eggs in one basket, right? So when you spread the risk, the natural reaction to that is these entities, or these countries rather, they will come back with their own trade. We saw what happened in the oil sector, with Saudi Arabia, OPEC, and the Russians, right? And that kind of worked itself out for a while until, someone was making more than the other. Crisis happened. Yeah. Russia pulled out. OPEC backtracked. the Saudis, retracted again, and it affects all trade. So I think what Tom's saying is we will see diversification. That's inevitable. But the ultimate result out of that is we're just going to create, you don't plan these things, but the natural reaction is we're going to see new cartels, negotiate new trade agreements ultimately.
Well, Alani, thank you for that. Jasmine, you put him back on mute for us, but thank you for sharing that. I want to go back to the funding question a little bit, Greg. What advice do you have for founders? You were kind of candid about the conversation you had with Sam. What are you telling an entrepreneur if they're trying to raise money in the middle of it? What advice are you giving them?
Do what you have to do to survive and fight another day.
So survival is winning.
You had to try to get to the other side of the uncertainty. When Sam and I talked this morning, and she told me about the individual who offered her some capital last week at a valuation that was half of what she was looking for, my suggestion was take it. Right? That you're going to take more dilution than you want, but if you can eliminate the uncertainty, take some additional dilution, do what you have to do to have your business go forward. To the extent you can put your destiny for the next 12 months in your own hands, whether that means giving up some shares or whatever you got to do. But in terms of raising money, flexibility is the name of the game, and there are going to be bottom fishers that are going to be out there, right? So I'm not saying take any ridiculous offer that comes along, but just understand that the market's going to get tight, and to give yourself as much flexibility as possible. For founders, any founder who's not currently profitable ought to be, 90% of those need to be reducing their overhead.
Yeah,
and
some tough choices, right?
And based on a scenario that's worse than whatever they currently think worst case scenario is, right?
Yeah,
it's the truth, right? And so if you think if the worst thing you can imagine is I keep all my existing customers, but I'm not going to get any new ones, plan around you're going to lose some of your existing customers and make decisions based on that, because look, there's a reason, and founders are irrationally enthused about their own enterprise, and they need to be, right? If we were all super rational, there'd be nobody that would start their own company. So they have irrational exuberance, and there's a reason why 95% of the time folks come in under their model, right? This is not a time for founders to kid themselves.
Yeah. Let me transition to Thom a little bit on that one. So Greg mentioned the fact that there are going to be some, I think you used the expression bottom feeders, right? Some people searching for value and some people just trying to take advantage, especially funders if they have money. What's your advice from an ecosystem perspective about that? Is that right? Is that just capitalism? And then how did you suggest people think about that, Thom? Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I have a couple thoughts. First, what I'd say to the founders out there is, be mindful of the personal implications and the personal risk that you assume during this trying time. As I mentioned, my last startup right after 9/11, what I did in hindsight was so crazy. I mean, I was writing checks to cover payroll from my home equity line of credit. I raided my 401k by hundreds of thousands of dollars to keep everything afloat. And we eventually sold our way out, of the curve. But when you, as the founder, put yourself at such a personal risk and strain, it compromises your intellect. It compromises the way you think. You are not a clinical, disinterested third party making the smartest decisions, right?
Yeah.
And in hindsight, like I said, it worked out for me ultimately, but that's more dumb luck than that heroic, I did the.
So are advisors part of that solution, Thom? You mentioned that disinterested third party. Is this when you rely more on advisors to help you think through it?
Mentors and advisors, I cannot stress enough, are a resource for you during these trying times. They just are absolutely essential. Now, to the point of your question as it relates to the ecosystem, we are, as luck would have it, or fate, we are right in the middle of a seed and micro grant funding round. And these are our $50,000 and $10,000 grant cycles. And we recognize that the need at this particular moment is greater now than it ever is. So even though we've augmented the way we're going to work, and we're doing virtual and all that stuff that we're all kind of working our way through right now, we are not wavering from our schedule. We are not pushing back timelines. We are going to deploy fully and probably extra capital right now. Hopefully, if the batch that came in, the only caveat to that is that everybody that applied for this round, we all did so in kind of a pre-corona world.
Yeah.
Right.
The uses of money must have entirely changed, right? Whatever the use of money was 30 days ago, it's probably different than the use of money now.
And it's going to affect the lens that we do the evaluation on, for sure. But we are definitely going to work through that, and work with our review teams and with the founders, the applicants that have applied that'll make it, kind of to the top semifinalist status, to understand, what can we do in addition to just the money to deploy? Because there's going to be people coming in, good and the bad, right? Bottom feeders, per what Greg said, which I should mention for everybody on the call. Greg's on our board, by the way, so he's one of my bosses, and he's awesome to have on the board at an organization like NCIDEA. So we have that perspective at the table as well, right? And we can look at that and say to people like Sam and others, maybe this is the best deal you've got on the table at the moment, right? And you need to consider that. But ask the question of those that are willing to come in and write those checks. What are you bringing to the table in addition to the money? And that's good advice back pre-corona, right? And if that answer is still it's dumb or opportunistic money, then maybe you try to mothball for as long as you can, and then just reconstitute once we get on the other side of this.
Yeah.
Because in hindsight, that's where I think a lot of, especially first-time founders, they look at how incrementally all the overhead is built up over time. They feel personally an obligation to all their employees. I know I always do and always did. And you look at them and you say, wow, your livelihood depends upon this dream of mine that you joined. And now I'm struggling to give you that financial security that you and your family need. And again, that's where you put yourself at risk and you take on greater liabilities than you need to.
Yeah.
I think you need to have certain honest conversation with your team and say, here, what can we do to survive, to that next day?
Well, let's do this. Part of the mantra of the Packard Place Public House is they normally last about as long as it takes me to drink a pint of beer, which I'm getting dangerously short of. And plus, I know virtual is a little bit different, and we've been at it about 45 minutes here. So what I want to do next quickly, have you all kind of go through, give you kind of one or two or three best pieces of advice for people on the call. We'll go round robin. Then what I'd love to do is we're going to try and get everyone together to turn their video on so that we can get a screenshot of all the participants here, which would be great. And then we're going to go into these breakout rooms, and each of these panelists is going to lead a breakout room where you can opt into which room you go into and have more of a discussion like this, but on a smaller group scale, so we can have more back and forth. So first, I'm going to go Greg to you, and then Sam, and then back to Tom. Best piece of advice, kind of punchy, hard hitting for folks on the line here.
Yeah. Founders, be open with your team. Be transparent, and don't be afraid to say you don't know. And don't be afraid. And if you're feeling it, don't be afraid to say that you're a little bit frightened, right? But your team is looking for you to be an authentic leader. Find, and I'm going to focus on the founder side, because I think that's I think that's appropriate.
What's impacted the most?
Find a mentor who's been through this before, and not this, but as and someone who is an entrepreneur. It's one thing to have been an employee at Bank of America during 2008. It's another thing to have been someone who was in a 10-person startup trying to survive 2008. Have someone who you can speak with authentically, honestly, candidly about how you're feeling, about what you're afraid of, all that. So that means probably better if it's someone who isn't in the camp of being a potential investor or any of that sort of thing, but someone who can speak with the experience of having been there and what it was like for them. I think that's critical.
So to that point, I'll give a quick plug. On the Packard Place website, there are community entrepreneurs and residents who do free open office hours for the entire community. I think there's 7 or 8 or 9 of us on there now. If you go to the Packard Place website, really good people that could provide a little bit of that role if you don't have someone right now. Sam, same thing to you, kind of quick, pithy, best piece of advice for the folks on the line.
I think Greg and I, literally the one thing I wrote was who you take advice from down. I think for me, this is my first time fundraising in general, so dealing with something like this is literally not ideal. And a lot of the times I do wonder, constantly wonder, am I making the right decisions? Am I being stubborn? And that's a normal fundraising session. I don't know if there are comparable situations, especially to people who you could speak with in Charlotte, or the networks that you've already built where you can tap on individuals who have legitimately gone through what you're going through, especially because it is so individualistic when it comes to a company perspective, whether you're a company that's fully in person and relies on that, or if you're someone who the sales are dropping because of X. It's just one of those things that, I mean, my initial gut reaction, because it is how I always react, is get together, you see someone on Instagram who says they're having a hard time, figure out how you can help. I don't have limited time. I have limited bandwidth. I have very limited money. Let's be honest, very, very clear about the limited money aspect of it. There are still ways in which you can contribute, very small ways. When it comes to your team, that's probably the hardest part as a founder. And I think that that's very much, I think it's what people are dealing with from the other side right now. A lot of people on the call, they work for someone, probably. That's my guess. You have 30% that are founders, and you have the other 60% or whatever the math is, or 70% that answer to someone. And it's very, very challenging because it's always been lonely on the top, and you're struggling, and you don't want to cause any alarm, and you're acting very conscientiously of the money that you do have. I sent out notes to people about little spending things where I'm like, this is going to be tighter. You know why, but I want to be very clear that we're okay as of today. But, just anticipate, we're a startup. I think the one thing that's been very much missing in this conversation is the mental health aspect of it, the transition. And I've been remote, my team's been remote. We're pretty lucky in that accord. But this is a really trying time, even if you just take a step outside and you're a normal person. I have friends who have weddings who've been canceled. I have family who's afraid they're going to get sick because they have a condition, and you try to rationalize. When I talked to Greg today, he said, I'm really surprised how well you took that, or something along those lines. And you think about it, I'm like, my husband's okay.
Yeah,
my family's okay. Like, that's bottom line. Whatever happens, that's the bottom line. And you don't want to get upset about it or choked up about it. But then you talk to people on your team who's like, I rely on my husband's paycheck, and he doesn't have a job. He works in the event industry, and I can't fundraise to give them a paycheck.
Well, I know, Sam, I'll tell you too, I think one of the things that you're a great role model of is that tenacity that entrepreneurs have to fight their way through it. And Greg, Thom both mentioned is just surviving. There's a little bit of how, digging down deep, and how bad do you want it as an entrepreneur? This is a
lot of wine too, Dan.
A little bit of wine, yes.
A lot of this.
Thom, your thoughts, kind of closing thoughts, recommendations, and then everyone don't drop off, because we do want to get a nice big group photo here and break out. So please hang with us till the end if you can. Thom?
I'm going to answer from the perspective of a former founder. Greg and Sam already shared most of the great advice there. The final piece I'd have with you is, when you develop healthy relationships with your clients, in times like this, you can actually invest in them as a partner in your survival. And when I go back to my experience after 9/11, there were 2 client accounts in particular that carried us through, because I had the rapport. I had invested in building the relationship. I could put the cards on the table and say, hey, listen, if you like the work we did for you, on that last campaign 72 days ago, I need you to pay your bill because I have to cover payroll in 48 hours, right? And I can't without your check. And so we're all human, right? So we're all experiencing this, right? Your buyers, your clients, right? They've got kids that are home right now, that they're homeschooling. Their life is chaos as well. And so if you've taken time, or if you can take the time to start investing in these relationships, you can find some of your most valuable resources that'll get you through the storm are the people that are paying you for your service, because you have figured something out that they need and that they want, right? Yeah. And that's a great way to get through it, because those clients stuck with us afterwards, right? And we felt like we shared and that we went through something together. And that just became beautiful, going forward for the growth of the company.
Real quick too, Dan, like shout out, same on the same line, like Haley from Skill Pop, all in-person events. And she figured out in a weekend how to make it virtual. And I think from Instagram, she sold out of those classes. So like, we're lucky we've pivoted, like not pivoted, but gave opportunities for people to give us more money as far as representing their brands, and it's working. But like those people, those are the ones who are going to make it. And those, as far as a community, sign up for some Skill Pop classes. If you want a new space, go to Rabu. Like just if you need some, like a place to rent, if you need your laundry done to you, laundry. If you need your dog walked while you're hosting a wedding in your backyard, go ahead and look at Skipper, because that's literally what we're doing.
Yeah.
And just really lean in.
Yeah. And I think we'll kind of wrap up with that thought. But again, don't drop off, because we want to get everyone there. I will tell you a big toast to all of you on the panel, to everyone in the community. We need each other more now than ever. So cheers to everyone. Really appreciate you all being here today. Don't drop, because we're about to do a group photo though.
Never. All
right. So now what we need to do is turn everyone's camera on. And if everyone could turn their camera on, we're going to do a gallery view shot. See if we can do this. Assuming you can do that. I don't know if we can get everyone. We might only be able to get like 50 or 60 people here, Ashley. Oh yeah, because it only goes through, we have 3 full screens of people. Holy cow, that is amazing. That's awesome. Thank you all. But if everyone wants to, I know some of you are calling in. Why don't we, hopefully someone on the QC FinTech team there is a snap and shot. There we go. Let me do that too. Hold on. I think it's.
Smile harder, guys.
Yeah, everyone. Here we go. Smile.